Hello, my friends. I want to talk about what is the purpose of having an army. What is the army for? And I would like to offer my own opinion first. That is, most of the cases, an army is created for the sole purpose of enforcing the will of the ruling class of that particular regime. And this particular purpose, or this set of values and purpose of the ruling class, it can be noble, it can be malicious, or it could be self-interest. Nonetheless, by and large, they fund, they organize and maintain the standing army to serve their own interest. And now let me move on to some of the examples that I want to use to justify my conclusion. The first is that the most powerful army in the world currently, the armed force of United States, it is as it claimed, rather, this particular armed force is here to protect the interest of American people. No, but if you look at what it has been doing for the past few decades, you will come to realize it is only doing things for the interest of the American ruling class. For example, they fight very exhaustive and expensive war in Afghanistan, in Iraq, which has absolutely no capability to endanger the security of the United States, but nevertheless they send their force to spend billions of dollars, while the ordinary American people, they are having issues to they're basically living, most of like American people, they're living from paycheck to paycheck, while all this money spent in the military can be used to offer good public service like health, like education, like pensions. Those funds instead diverted and to be used for the armed force. So therefore, we can see that this particular armed force is not serving the interest of the United States, the people of the United States. To the contrary, sometimes they were used to crush the elements within the civil society, that those positive or progressive elements within the civil society which calls for a change in the system code. For example, after the First World War, there is a march of veterans to the Washington D.C. They call for, and justifiably, they call for compensation for their service in the World War I. They had been doing a good job. They had been fighting bravely in the European continent, and now after war, most of them lived in poverty, and a lot of false promises made by the government were not substantiated. So they call for the compensation, okay? They call for some form of funding or help from the government. So what did the army do? The Army of the United States, led by, I think, General MacArthur, they simply rode into the camp of those set up by those veterans, and they basically crushed the resistance put up by those veteran soldiers. So this is another example that the army came into the defense of the ruling class instead of standing with the people, with the majority of with the mass people. They came to defend the ruling class. And then now let me move on to the another kind of army, which is the Russian army. As we can see, currently the Ukraine conflicts, the war between Russia and Ukraine is ongoing, and this army was sent by Putin in the name of protecting Donbass people to fight in Ukraine. Is it serving the people, the Russian people, the majority of Russian people, serving the interest for the Russian people? I think partly yes. If you ignore the misinformation and the falsification that those propagandas were produced against the Russian, in fact, I would say majority of Russian people, the people in Russia, supported this war. They viewed people in the Donbass area as their brothers and sisters who are under constant harassment and constant brutality from the Nazist force by Ukraine army. So very much so, they supported the actions of the Russian army. So from that point of view, yes, it is serving. They have they have a common interest from the Russian people, and actions performed by the Russian armed force is well supported. So from that perspective, yes, the Russian army is serving for the interest of Russian people, but I would say that it is more of a convergence of the interests on this point, between the Russian ruling class and the Russian common people that results in such a situation. Because while it is supported by the Russian people, it is also overwhelmingly supported within the Russian elites to call for the action in Ukraine. And those elites, Russian elites, they view the Ukraine, hostile Ukraine, as an existential threat to Russian Confederation, and they cannot tolerate that. So in that sense, Zelensky and his government has crossed the red line by expressing the interest to join NATO, or expressing a very hostile attitude towards Russia and the Russian people living in Ukraine. So yeah, therefore, yes. So from that angle, the Russian army is therefore aligned with the interest of common Russian people, but it is only in this particular war. What about other wars that we have to look at? There were definitely other efforts and wars that are not in the interest of Russian people. For example, in the 1980s, then the Soviet army invaded Afghanistan. And Afghanistan is a very remote country to the Soviet border, but nevertheless, Soviet army fought a bloody war there for a couple of years, with great loss of life and great loss of equipment and a lot of money spent. And that was an unpopular war. Nevertheless, how unpopular it is, it does not stop the Soviet government from sending the army, and the army army diligently performed its duty in Afghanistan. So if you look at these two wars, you come to realize that most of the time, even the Russian army is serving only for the interest of the ruling class. And I'll come on to the Chinese, the People's Liberal Army in China, what its current status and what the mode like in army and out of the army. No doubt, even the PLA, the Chinese army, is here to serve the interest of CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. In fact, it is one of the fundamental doctrine of the PLA is that the PLA should be and only do what the CCP commands it to do. Of course, the CCP claims that this is the armed force created of and by and for the Chinese people. However, effectively, through the Commissar system and through all kinds of organization, it is only that the handful of those so-called military committee within the political bureau is able to manage and use this army. Even small scale of this army movement have to be green lighted by this military committee within the political bureau. It is almost to that extent. I would say that in the 1980s and in particular 1990s, the morale of the army is somewhat damped because of all those confusions and those the lackluster performance, the economy performance. So it led to a downward trend of morale in the PLA. A lot of its elements were involved in even the smuggling. It is known that the Navy the PLA Navy also participated in the smuggling of those foreign products to China, bypassing the custom. But after the 1990s, when the China joined the WTO and the economy really picks up, so was the morale in the PLA also picks up, and the government stops the army from doing any business. In the 1990s and 1980s, the army is allowed to set up its own business due to the lack of funding from the government. They were actually encouraged to make such kind of move. But when towards the end of 1990s, when they were more and more stable, the economy is more and more stable, and there were more fundings to the army, this kind of practice was stopped, and the training and morale of the army were brought into shape. After, when it comes to 21st century, in the past 2 decades, the PLA and its organization and its equipment have been undergoing a massive upgrade and transformed into a quite effective and a formidable army force. But the essence of this army has not been changed. It is controlled, wholly controlled by the Chinese Communist Party, and by referring to Chinese Communist Party, it is effectively controlled by the handful of people on the top of this party apparatus hierarchy. So, is it serving the interest of Chinese people? I would say yes, to a certain extent. In terms of defending the territory and deter the foreign aggression, yes, it is serving the interest of Chinese people. But this is due to the fact that the interest of Chinese people is mostly aligned with the interest of our ruling class. So I would say, if there is a conflict of those interests, then the loyalty of the army will be put into question, whether they stand by the people or stand by the ruling elites. It remains to be seen. We have seen those. It's quite rare that such conflicts will be displayed or be played out in this communist China in the recent history. Even the so-called Tiananmen Square, this event, which involved a few divisions from PLA, which came in and so pacified the situation in Beijing. However, this action is now more and more viewed in a very positive light by most of Chinese people, especially the Chinese youngsters, because they view that it is the Western manipulative propaganda that orchestrated this particular event, just like those so-called Arab Spring, the revolution, Orange Revolution, which happened in Ukraine. So it was a prelude of Orange Revolution. It was manipulated and organized by the Western powers. So by completely restoring the order and crushed whatever the agendas brought up by this Tiananmen Square movement, China is able to stand on its own feet steadily and move towards modernization and towards self-control in our political affairs. So even to that part, the army is, so from that point of view, the PLA is serving the interest of Chinese people. Lastly, I want to do a analysis towards the role of PLA in maintaining the stability in South China Sea in the view of Chinese people. While it was portrayed by Western media that the Chinese Navy effectively grabbed and built small islands in the South China Sea in a bid to control much part of South China Sea. But what I think is that this presence of force is necessary to counter the influence by the United States, where, as if you look carefully, United States is behind, is the sole master behind much of the tragic events happening around the globe. For example, the Kosovo War, the war in Libya, and the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, now the war in Ukraine. It is all orchestrated mostly by the American ruling class. So such kind of Chinese force will serve as a counterforce of the influence from the United States. I have no doubt that given any opportunity, United States want to stir up trouble and want to replicate what they have done in Europe to Southeastern Asia. If it were not for the objection from China, Southeast Asia much of it will be in trouble and in turmoil. Why? Such disastrous consequences, instability in Asia, in Europe, in Middle East, all in all will serve the interest of American ruling class. As long as it is more dangerous, more unstable outside of the United States, and the capital and the fund will naturally flow back to the United States, and that will be good for its economy, but it will also such kind of is a very desired outcome for those people who are behind the scene, who manage and effectively run the government of the United States.